Hi everyone, welcome back to CSS 101, and in this video I'm going to be talking about selectors. So if you've watched previous videos in this series, we've actually introduced the concept of selectors, but this is going to be more of a deeper dive here. So as you can see on the screen, we have a HTML file here, and we have some markup set up, and we're going to use some selectors to style this HTML file here. So we've already have the style.css file linked up here. And the first selector I'm going to show you is called the universal selector here. So universal selector means it's going to select everything in your HTML file. And to do that, you just hit the star key and then the curly brace block here, and then you can put your stylings in here. So usually when we use the universal selector is to do a reset of your HTML stylings here, and we do this usually because different browsers such as Chrome and Firefox, they may have different default stylings here, and if you're going to be designing a website, you're going to want to make sure that it looks the same on different websites. And to do that, we usually do a reset. Basically what we do is we set the padding to 0, and we're going to set the margin to 0. So you don't really need to know what these values mean for now, but when we refresh the browser here, you can see everything sorts of squeezes in together. So basically we've just removed the space from every element, so that after that we can put in the spacings that we want. So this way different browsers which will actually look similar to each other. So that is the universal selector. So if we want to have a more specific selector, what we can do is we can use what is called the type selector or element selector. So we've actually done we've used this previously. So if, for example, you want to target this title here, what we can do is we can select the H2 element, and then we can put in the styles here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the font family, and I'm going to put sans serif here. Refresh this. Now you can see the font family here has changed. So that is the type selector or the element selector. So another selector is the class selector. Let's go back to the HTML file here. So if you know about classes, basically it's a way for you to group elements together. So the div can be part of the main class. You can also put on other elements. Let's just put it on maybe this paragraph as well. And then you want to style that class, you can just put the dot, and this time the class name, and maybe we're going to do something. I'm just going to put a border on px solid, and as you can see here, there's a border in the this div element here. It only goes up to here, so the last paragraph does not have a border, and we also have a border for the inside the paragraph here. So that is the class selector. We can also use the ID selector. So ID selector is a little bit more specific to that item. You just give an ID of it, and you can reference that element by using the hash. So use the hash and then the ID name, and then the curly brace block here, just, and then refresh the page. You can see it just selects that particular element with that ID of unique here. So that is the ID selector. Okay, so now that we've looked at the type, class, and ID selectors, I want to talk about the list selector. So the list selector here. So what is the list selector? First, I want to show you where we're going to style the H2 as the color of gray, and I also want to style all paragraphs the color of gray here. So when we refresh this browser here, we can see this title is gray and all the paragraphs are the font color of gray here, but there's actually a better way of doing it. We can use the list selector. So you just separate all the selectors by a comma, and then you put the next selector here. So you can just put it neatly in one curly brace block here, and it still works. So let me just change the style so you can actually see the difference. So there you go, you've targeted the h2 and all the paragraphs here, and you can do it more than two as well. You can put another id selector as well, or a class selector, any selector. Just separate it by commas and it will work here. So that is the list selector. So the next thing I want to show you is what we call the attribute selector. So if you know your HTML elements, you can give them attributes. For example, these anchor tags, you want to put a link, you can put the href attribute and id and class and so forth. And you can also select a element based on what attribute it possesses. So for example, we have a paragraph here with a attribute called title, and you have two other paragraphs here with no attributes here. So if you just want to target the paragraph with the attribute, what we can do is we can say p, and in square brackets we can put the attribute name. That attribute name is title, and then what I'm going to do is going to give it a font style of italics, and if we refresh it, we can see now the first paragraph that had the attribute of title here is italicized, whereas the other two paragraphs here is still of the normal style here. So that's how you target the element with an attribute. And you can actually use it to be even more specific. So for example, we have these two links here with two different links, and we maybe just want to select just one of the links here. So what we can do, we can do the same thing. We can target the anchor tag and the anchor tag with a href, but this time we can put the value as well. So I'm going to target the one that has example.com, and we'll just change the color to purple, and I think I got it. It's not font color, it's just color. And as you can see, we just targeted the first linked over there with the attribute href and the value of w.example.com here. So those are how you use the attribute selector. So the next thing I want to show you is what we call the pseudo selector. So pseudo selectors are just a group of selectors that give a sort of extension to all the selectors that we have used here. So for example, if we want to have a styling that only is applied when we put our cursor over that item, what we can do is we can use one of these pseudo selectors. So if we're going to do that, let's say we want to select the link, so the anchor tag, and then we put a colon, and we just put the pseudo selector of hover there. So what this means is we want to put in a style that only appears when we put the mouse over a anchor tag. And then we're going to put the stylings there. I'm just going to bold it. So when we refresh this page now, if we hover over it, it will start to bold here. So that is a pseudo selector. Another pseudo selector is something called ends child. So what we can do is we can look at the list items. We're going to look at the list items, put another colon, nth child, and I want to target the third child. So nth child means basically you can put a number here and say I want to look at the third child, or you want to look at maybe 2n, which is the even numbers. Let's just do 3 here. So when we refresh this, we've targeted the third list item here. We put the font weight of bold. So that is another pseudo selectors, and there are actually many pseudo selectors. I'm just going to put the reference in a link in the description below for you to look at. And yeah, so that is the pseudo selector. So the last thing I'm going to show you is something called um a descendant selector. So if, for example, you have sort of in this HTML, we have this class main here, and we have this last paragraph that is outside this main class here, and we only want to style the two paragraphs that is in the main class here. So what we can do is we can reference that class name main, and then put a space and then put a p there for paragraph, and then we're just gonna bold this, make it bold, maybe change the color to red. And when we run this now, you can see the first two paragraphs have been given a style, and the last paragraph does not have a styling here. So basically that is targeting the descendant of the class selector of main here. So another thing I want to show you is, what if, let's say, I have another div here inside, and I put in the paragraph here. So let's put the paragraph here, and if I refresh this page now, see, you can see all these paragraphs now have all the stylings, because what we're targeting is any descendant, any paragraph that is a descendant of the class main here. So what happens if we just want to target the direct descendant? So we don't want we just want to stop at the level below, and we don't want to go further into the HTML tree here. So what we can do is we can use the greater than sign. This means we are going to target the direct descendants. So it's just like, for example, father and the child, or the parent and the child, not the grandparent and the grandchild here. So we're going to just refresh this page now. The first two paragraphs have the style, and the third paragraph has no styles here. So that is the direct descendant here. So these descendants, basically all these spaces and greater than signs, are part of a group called composite selectors, and there are actually more composite selectors that are available, just like the pseudo selectors. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the reference in the link in the description, and you can take a look at it. But what we've actually gone through in this video here is one of the most commonly used selectors here, and you should be able to design a web page with these basic selectors here, no problem. So we've come to the end of this video, and in the next video what we're going to take a look at is the box model. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more of this content, please give this video a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell for your notifications.